At Vincis, we believe that your presentation is your shop window, and that the quality of that presentation determines the difference between a prospect becoming your customer or becoming your competitor's customer. If your presentation looks like this, a heading and a series of bullet points, chances are your competitors are going to win. Now, there are several things wrong with this slide, but the most important thing that's wrong with this slide is that all of the information is textual and it is self-explanatory. And because it takes 23 seconds to read, chances are the audience have not read it because they're listening to me. And reading text is an active process, and listening to me talk is a passive process. And most people adopt a passive listening mode rather than an active reading mode, which means that generally speaking, people don't read the text on a PowerPoint slide. So there are three levels of people that we often talk about use these slides, and I'll go into them very quickly in the video. You can always come on our training course and see the longer version. Some people just read the text. They know that's bad, so you get level 2 who read the text and add more information. Same presentation, just longer. Then you get the people who recognize that the text doesn't work, and so they add the visuals in. That file, insert, clip art, in order to try and improve the visual appeal of the slide. And then we get people who send it to a designer and say, please make my slides look attractive. Now, we would argue all you've done is made your rubbish slides look attractive. So this is now attractive rubbish. It isn't suddenly a better presentation. So let's go back to what's wrong with it. Like I said, this takes 23 seconds to read, and my central executive, the bit in my brain that's paying attention, will only pay attention for 6 to 9 seconds. So I need a way of getting this down. Now, one strategy is to recognize that lots of the words that are on this slide don't really add any value. So let's take the top sentence. Are, those, that, and the audiences are irrelevant. I could just say get attention. It would be much shorter. You would read it quicker, and I could get on with explaining why. And I can turn all of this slide into something that can be read in 3 to 5 seconds. And I'm from Liverpool, and even I can shut up for 3 to 5 seconds. Thereby demonstrating one of the techniques, put up and shut up. By putting it up and allowing you to read it, by reading it in my head to judge the amount of time, then looking at the audience if you were real, and then responding to the fact that you've now looked at me, allows me to pace the information at the speed at which the audience can assimilate it, rather than what most presenters do, which is to pace the information at the speed at which they can present it, which is often too fast to be understood. So that simple technique slows down the pace to an appropriate point where the audience can assimilate it. But that's still not quite good enough for us, because it's still text and it's still getting processed on the left-hand side of the brain along with what I'm listening to. So even though you use your eyes, your phonological loop turns it into sound in your head, and you process it exactly the same way as you process what you hear from me. What that does is ultimately overload the processing power of the left hemisphere. So what we want to do is take some of that and move it onto the right hemisphere and display it as a diagram, and then I can talk over the diagram and you get what John Sweller calls dual encoding. John Sweller is the Professor of Education at the University of New South Wales, and he has proven that if we can do that and get dual encoding happening, what you do is double, sometimes treble, people's ability to assimilate the information. So let me demonstrate. How do I take this and turn it into a diagram? Well, the diagram looks like this. And what you're experiencing is what we call visual cognitive dissonance. Visual because you're looking at it, cognitive because you're thinking about it, and dissonant because it doesn't quite mean the same thing. And the thing about dissonance is you try and resolve the dissonance, and you resolve the dissonance by either trying to guess what I'm going to say, or ultimately wait for me to explain it, or wait for me to click and build the diagram on. And the important thing there is you're waiting to hear what I've got to say. How much more effective will your presentations be if the audience want to know what you've got to say over it? How much more effective would your sales presentations be if your prospects want to hear what your salesperson has to say? So let me put you out your misery. 3 essential ingredients to a good presentation: me, the presenter; you, the audience. This then represents all of the barriers, all of the things that get in the way. If you come on the training course, we'll explain in detail what those are, but suffice to say the biggest one is language, where I say things with intent that you hear them with a different intent. That language barrier provides lots of confusion in presentations. Then we've got the distractions. Could be external distractions, could be internal distractions, people coming outside the room, people looking at their iPhones, or maybe it's something we've put on the slide that distracts people. So one of the things you'll often find marketing departments and graphics designers want to do is to put lots of visual information on the slide, pictures and photographs and people and all that kind of stuff. Makes the slide look attractive, but fundamentally can be a big distraction as people are looking at the picture and trying to determine why it's there. They are not listening to the presenter explain what's in the foreground. So those barriers and those distractions are the problem. The third ingredient is we have to have a specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic and timed objective. In a learning environment, that's called a learning objective. In a sales environment, that's called a value proposition. But in either, the definition of a good presentation is this and only this. Can we take this presentation and push it across to the audience? If you do that, good presentation. If you fail to do that, waste of time. Now, here's a trick. Pause the video and try and write down the 5 bullet points that were on the slide preceding this. And I suspect what you'll find is you can remember 1, maybe 2. And then I pose the question, well, if the audience can't remember 100% of the content 3 minutes after you presented it, what's the point of the bullet points? They serve no purpose for the audience. They might help you, might help the presenter, but they're not going to fundamentally help the audience. And presentations are about the audience. Now, if I ask you to draw the diagram that I just used to show what a winning presentation is, what we know is 98% of the people can draw it. 98% of the people also draw it in the same sequence. So the first thing they put up are the presenter and the audience. Then they put in the barriers, then they put in the distractions, then they make a mistake and put the message here, then they realize they can't push it across because it's on paper, so they draw an arrow to prove that they were watching. Now, the important thing is, 98% remember the diagram, 98% remember the sequence, and usually 70-80% of them can remember the non-visual information, so what was said over the slide as well. And try it. Stop the video, find a passerby, get a piece of paper, draw this diagram and explain it to them, and then ask them, did it sound like a credible presentation? And what you'll find is, if you understand the diagram, you can repeat the diagram and give a presentation without a lot of practice, and it will come across as slick and professional and like you understand and know what you're doing. So, ask yourself a question. What do you want your sales presentations to be? A series of headings and bullet points that you know are soporific, going to send the audience to sleep, and are highly unlikely to differentiate yourself from the competition? Or do you in fact want a series of nice, simple, clean diagrams that articulate well you, what you do, and the reasons for dealing with you? And if that's what you want, then give us a call, because at Vincis we believe that winning is everything.